Welcome back to the Charter Podcast presented by St. Xavier University. My name is Ruthie Polinsky, and I am with Alex Shapiro on this Wednesday. Man, a lot has happened, Alex Shapiro. It's been a week since I've been on the pod. I know you did the post-game pod, but there has been some changes at Hallis Hall, to say the least. Some historic changes, one might say.
Yes, definitely. One would definitely say historic changes. The Bears have done something they've never done before. They fired the guy. It felt like it just had to happen. We were talking about it after the game. It's just like, what more do you need to see? What could Matt Eberflus do over the second half of a season to save his job? The same mistakes kept happening over the course of multiple weeks. It wasn't an isolated thing. And it was clear by the end of that Lions game that he had lost the locker room. And when a coach loses the locker room, that just feels like it's time to make a change. So it's unfortunate, like I've said this before. You should never be rooting for a guy to lose his job, because they're human beings and they have families and livelihoods are on the line and all of that. But a change needed to be made. And then again, like I said, when the locker room is lost, that's when it's really time to make a change.
Yeah, you used the perfect word. I think unfortunate, disappointing is kind of the word that comes to mind for me. I think this offseason, it's like, okay, they got the quarterback. Like, let's go. You won 7 games last year. The defense was in place. You put more talent on the roster, and you felt like everything was there for this team to at least be competitive. But I think just the way that these games were being lost was so devastating over and over and over again that I think the organization had to send a message to the players, to the fan base, that the expectations were higher. And I'm disappointed for Eberflus, because I think he's a really wonderful man. I think he cares deeply about his players, and he's a good coach. I just don't know if everything was in place for him to succeed here. And, you talk about the families involved, and just, it's a reminder, right? Like, not only is it Matt Eberflus's family, but it's this entire staff now is uncertainty looming. Right. And right. I think that's also something that gets lost in all of this. So I'm glad you said that, because it's always, whenever anyone gets fired, it's never, Matt Eberflus didn't hire himself,
also true.
It's never like the vitriol and like the hatred toward a coach or a player when things don't go well. It's never sat right with me. Like, for things to get personal and to call people names, like, that's just never appropriate, in my opinion. And so, yeah, people say like, well, Matt Eberflus is making a lot of money. He's going to be just fine. Don't feel sorry for him. Well, the quality control coach is not. And he may not know where he's going to be next year. So
the assistant offensive line coach who's working under Chris Morgan, they're going to have to uproot a lot of people are going to have to uproot their families and move if they want to stick in football.
And I think also something that's been talked about is, right, like, let's see what happens with Thomas Brown. He could potentially be a candidate. And I think everyone's rooting for that. I think everyone wants to see Thomas Brown have success. I don't know why you wouldn't. And we'll get into, possible outcomes as this progresses, as the storyline progresses. But Thomas Brown may want to bring in his people. This isn't his staff. He didn't put this staff together. This is Matt Eberflus, Shane Waldron offensive staff. So, I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's always really disappointing and frustrating for the people who this is very personal for. But I'd also like to get your thoughts, Alex, on the Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren press conference. Dare I even call it that? It was bizarre, led by an 8.5 minute opening statement from team president and CEO Kevin Warren, and Ryan Poles kind of sat there and looked sad. I think the word I used on the Big Pro Football Show was, he looks like he's had his heart broken. And I think that's probably pretty real for him. This is someone that stood by, hired Matt Eberflus, became very close to Matt Eberflus. They were always very aligned on the vision that they had for this football team. There was never really much tension between the two of them, so much so that Ryan Poles doubled down and kept him last year after the season. So I think Ryan Poles is probably not feeling so hot about how this all played out. And you really felt like he was taking a back seat on, what was it, Monday?
Yeah.
The press conference? Monday.
Right. And I will take it another step further. I would imagine Ryan Poles is bummed out because two things became clear to me over the course of that press conference. Kevin Warren is extremely involved in football decisions, extremely involved. And the other thing that became clear to me, if this head coach doesn't work out, this next head coach, I don't think Ryan Poles is sticking around. I think the next time, if there's a next time in 3 years, 4 years, whenever it is, I have a feeling it's going to be Kevin. Oh, I'm sorry. I moved my mic by accident. Mike got caught in the sweater. There's so much cable knitting in my sweater. Mike got caught. I think Kevin Warren is going to be hiring a GM and a head coach. And, you think, okay, a GM probably gets 2 head coaches, 2 quarterbacks. Matt Eberflus is head coach number 1. Next head coach is going to be head coach number 2. But you got to remember that Ryan Poles also made the decision to keep Justin Fields instead of CJ Stroud. So that is a big quarterback decision. And then the weight of having that number 1 overall pick twice, right? He used the number 1 overall pick to get Caleb Williams. He had the number 1 overall pick again and decided to trade it away again to keep Justin Fields instead of getting CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. That's a huge decision. So this to me feels like this is the last head coaching hire that I think Ryan Poles is going to make. And that kind of became clear to me over the course of that Monday press conference. I hadn't really thought about it, but it just kind of clicked in. And if I was Ryan Poles, I would probably be feeling the weight of that as well. This is an enormous decision ahead of them, and they absolutely have to get it right. Kevin Warren said it's a decision that could change the trajectory of the franchise for the next 10, 15, 20 years. And it felt hyperbolic at the time, but then when you think about it, you're like, oh, wait, no, you're right. It probably is, because if it doesn't work out, then you're looking at changing things up a lot again.
Yeah, I mean, I think any head coaching search can change the future of a franchise 10, 20 years. I think some would argue that this has set the organization back because it didn't go well. So, yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of weight. I think, to me, Kevin Warren says in that press conference that Ryan will have the final say. It did not feel like Ryan Poles is going to be driving this search. For the first time, I think Kevin Warren really said, yep, I'm going to be involved in football stuff too, not just the stadium. It felt like there's going to be some oversight from Kevin and sort of a patronizing, sort of, aggressive manner in the way that whole press conference took place. Kind of felt like some of the power has been stripped from Ryan Poles. And I guess only time will tell. But Ryan has made some decisions that haven't gone well. He did draft the quarterback that appears to be the answer. And he built a roster around that. Also worth noting, the initial Pro Bowl voting coming out this week probably didn't help his morale because none of his players are in the top 10. And I think there's just a lot for Ryan Poles to grasp, along with having to fire someone that you probably considered a close friend at that point. So it's a lot. It's heavy. And it's going to be a fascinating sort of transition into this next era. Fascinating offseason. Who do they bring in? Who do they target? And we are going to, on this podcast, for the next 5 weeks or so, we will be diving into some potential candidates. Alex Shapiro leading this research project. We so appreciate it. And we're going to dive into some potential candidates and what they, maybe pros and cons of what they would bring to the organization. We will start with probably the big headliner at the end of this episode, which we'll get into as well. So real quick, Alex, unless you had any other thoughts, I thought we could get into kind of today's news.
Let's do it.
Okay, so today we heard from Caleb Williams, we heard from Thomas Brown. We also received our first injury report since that Thanksgiving Day game. And holy smokes, it is sort of a shocker after a long weekend. Keenan Allen, Ryan Bates, Elijah Hicks, Roshan Johnson, DJ Moore, DeAndre Swift all did not practice on Wednesday. DNP, weren't even doing anything, okay? Limited. Kevin Byard, Coleman Shelton, and Darnell Wright. And, Thomas Brown said in his press conference today, all those guys have a potential to play on Sunday in San Francisco. What are your thoughts, Alex? Because I went negative. So let me get your thoughts.
Oh, it's bad news. When your three best offensive players, skill players, are all DNP, bad news. And I know Roma Dunze has been coming on strong. Tyler Scott has hardly played at all. I mean, Tyler Scott has barely seen the field this season. So if you're without Keenan Allen, you're without DJ Moore, you're now relying on the rookie who has gotten open a bunch because he's on the field with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore. And he's laid some good moves on guys. But that's a new situation for him to be truly wide receiver one. Tyler Scott, again, pretty cold. DeAndre Carter has not played much. DeAndre Swift, who has really been, in my opinion, the offensive MVP at times, right? When he's at his best, the Bears offense is at its best. Roshan Johnson is out. So now, Khalil Herbert's gone. So I guess you're looking at Darrington Evans to be the running back. Travis Homer to be
They signed someone. Didn't they sign someone?
They did. Demetric Felton, who I believe spent a little bit of time with the team earlier. So,
yeah,
Wright can't play. Larry Borum
you just led me. You're talking about the skill position players, but Ryan Bates, Coleman Shelton, Darnell Wright. Oh boy, protection's going to be tough. So, yeah, not good. And I guess, Alex, you're taking a very logical approach to this, and I think a lot can change, obviously, before Sunday. We've seen this happen. But my initial thought is, how hard are some of these veterans going to really try to play the rest of the season? Like, how much buy-in from these guys putting their bodies on the line for these next 5 games? It's tough, right? Like, you're not going to the playoffs. Obviously, you want to win for your pride, but like for your body, how much do you weigh this sort of the pros and cons of laying your body on the line every week? The business decisions. And so that's kind of my initial concern when you look at this list. We'll see how it plays out, but I'm curious. I'm curious to see what this buy-in looks. Obviously, I think the media is definitely riding this Thomas Brown train. You're seeing the energy that he injects into a room and the way that he motivates people and staff and players. But how far does that go, right? Like, for the Keenan Allens and especially Keenan Allen, who's trying to get another contract this offseason. Right. Like, DJ Moore got paid. Like, he's good, so I don't know. I just wonder what this all sort of looks like as the season kind of wraps up here.
Well, I would hope that DJ Moore, who you have paid to be a leader of your franchise, to be a cornerstone of your franchise, who needs,
of course,
needs time on task with Caleb Williams, because that chemistry has not been there all the time, especially in the middle of the field and the deep portions of the field. You would hope that he is motivated, since he is signed up to be here for a long time, would be out there. Because when the Bears have been able to get the ball in his hands in short yardage situations near the line of scrimmage, it's worked great. But on other parts of the field, it has not looked good, right? There was the big dig catch that should have set up a game-winning field goal, or a game tying field goal. I forget which game. It was either the Packers game or the Vikings game. He had the big catch. Earn that. There haven't been a lot of deep catches for DJ Moore this year. He needs that time on task to continue to develop that chemistry with Caleb Williams so that you can go into the offseason feeling better or really understanding what you need to work on. And the only way that that's going to happen is with reps. So if you're touching on something that has a shred of truth to it, right? Like, that's extremely concerning. And I don't know. It's tough. These guys could be actually hurt. These guys,
right.
100%. It's like that's kind of
who are we to
exactly.
Like, who are we to say this? But
exactly. But if I'm following you down that thread, it's concerning.
It's don't put the thread on me. I'm just saying it's the NFL. We've seen it happen. I'm not saying that this is something that these players would necessarily do. However, you do wonder what the buy-in is going to be. And sometimes when you say you got a soft tissue injury, that's sort of your way out for the, if you need to. So how many times have we seen players say, oh, got a hammy, not on this team necessarily, but just in the history of the NFL, it is what it is. So we'll see what happens. But if this is what is sort of taking place here, I think, obviously the Bears are going and saying they could get a win in San Francisco because of how banged up San Francisco is. I think San Francisco's sitting there being like, this is a get right game for us too. And that's probably sort of more of a testament to how in it we are. Like we're sitting here trying to like spin this in a way that's going to work out for the team we cover. I think the team that is playing the Bears is probably feeling similar.
Yeah. We're going to get more into the Niners matchup on Friday, as we always do. But this to me smells like when we were talking about the Bears having a get right game against the Patriots, and they laid an enormous egg against that team in what should have been the game that got them back on track. The Niners are going to show Chicagoland area what a get right game looks like. That's what this feels like to me.
Yeah.
Because Christian McCaffrey down, Jordan Mason down. We're looking at Kyle Juszczyk and Isaac Guerrero, who are not household names by any stretch of the imagination. But that Bears run defense still ain't good. And Kyle Shanahan is still extremely good at devising run schemes and devising run games. And they still got all sorts of playmakers. Brock Purdy has been healthy enough to play. And they were embarrassed in Buffalo. Embarrassed in Buffalo in the snow. I mean, the Bills were stunting on them, like truly stunting on them. Like the pitch to Josh Allen touchdown, that does not sit well with the 49ers. To me, it just feels like 49ers get right game all over it.
Love it. Let's get into our vibe check. So we're going to dive deeper into all this. So it is Wednesday. It is Vibe Check Wednesday. Vibe check.
There's the jingle.
It's a little less enthusiastic this week. So Alex Shapiro, let me get your vibe check on, we got a couple things here. We'll go down the list. Let me get your vibe check on Thomas Brown.
I'm curious. I am curious about Thomas Brown. At times he's passed the vibe check, like when he takes the podium. Initially it's like, oh, this guy has a certain, command over the room. And we've heard that guys are more attentive at meetings when he's at the podium. We've heard that his attention to detail or his attention to accountability rather, and his demanding nature is resounding with players. Okay, great. That's good. That's what you like to hear. He's helped Caleb Williams get the ball out of his hands. That's all well and good. How is he now as CEO also managing the offense? And let's see how he takes accountability when he screws up, when something goes wrong and he's got to answer for it. So far, he hasn't had to do that, right? How does that look? And I will say something dinged for me a little bit on Monday's press conference where he was asked about his culpability in the last play of the game. And it's interesting. We're going to talk about Caleb Williams. To me, Caleb Williams has been the most accountable man in the Bears organization about that last play of the game, where he today, like very explicitly said, here are two areas in which I screwed up. Thomas Brown was given that opportunity, and he said, you know what, we shouldn't worry about the last play of the game. There were other moments that were bad. The penalties, the other discipline. We had other opportunities to win that game. I'm not going to talk about the last play. That's history. That was an opportunity for him to take accountability, and he kind of passed, right? He kind of deflected. I'm not calling that a red flag yet. But it dinged. It dinged for me. There's going to be more adversity with this team. How does he handle it? Does he take that accountability does he say, here's how I screwed up, in the way that Caleb Williams did today? So I'm curious. I am very curious as to how this is going to turn out.
I read that differently from you. I will just say quickly about the Thomas Brown accountability. I actually thought he took it upon himself to bring up saying, I am not absolved from how the game ended. I don't know if I hear what you're saying, like the final drive, like there were some issues, but I did feel like he took that opportunity to say like this, like some of that's on me too. So I just interpreted that differently.
Flus said those things too. Flus said, I need to be better. I need to put the players in a position to win. But when it comes to the last play of the game, actually, this is what we want to do, and we just didn't execute. And to me, it sounded similar. To what Flus was saying about that last play of the game.
Okay, I'll give you my vibe check on Thomas Brown. My vibe check on Thomas Brown is cautiously hopeful. I want this guy to succeed. Seems like a man who knows what he's doing. Seems like he's young. He has certainly changed the offense for the Chicago Bears. Can he change sort of the trajectory of the entire football team? I hope so. I have no reason not to root for this man. I think he is very engaging. I think he's entertaining. I think he's a football coach. He is someone that is going to hold people accountable, as you mentioned. And I think he is going to hold himself accountable as well. And I feel hopeful for what this could mean, but I'm cautious because what does success mean for him in this position? Tough sled in here these last 5 games. On the road at San Francisco, Monday Night Football against the Vikings, Detroit Lions at home, Thursday, a short turnaround Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks, and then you finish the season at Green Bay. I mean, it's tough, right? It's going to be tough. So everyone, I think, is hoping that this is someone who could potentially have some success and then maybe show some sort of consistency for Caleb Williams and the offense next year if things do work out for him. I'm cautious because I think we've had our hearts broken a lot this season. And I'm also cautious because I just don't really have a ton of belief or trust that the organization knows what they're doing. So
which brings us to our next
subject on this vibe check Wednesday. How is your vibe? What is your vibe on the Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles duo?
Enlightened, because again, this was a moment where it was like, whoa, Kevin Warren might be calling a lot more shots on the football side than we really thought. Just the way that press conference unraveled. He was like, we are going to be in constant communication all the time throughout this coach. He's going to be the point person, right? Ryan's going to be the point person. Like he's going to be spearheading it, but then final say, it shouldn't come to final say. We're going to be aligned. If we're doing things right way, we're going to make the right decision for the Chicago Bears. After like a minute of explaining, he was like, if, we do dissent, which won't happen, Ryan will have the final say, but that won't happen. I want to say, I actually didn't count it out. I wish I had counted it out. But I want to say he said, ultimately, Ryan Poles is the general manager of the Chicago Bears, something like 4 or 5 times. We say that once, great. When you say it 5 times, I'm like, you're saying that a lot. You're really reassuring us that Ryan Poles is the general manager of this team. So again, I just feel enlightened that I think Kevin Warren is pulling a whole lot more strings on the football operations side of this than maybe we previously expected when we thought, okay, He's going to run the stadium stuff and the business stuff, and he'll be a check. He'll be a sounding board for Ryan Poles. But I feel enlightened that Kevin Warren has a lot more input into football decisions than at least I previously thought.
I think we learned a lot about the structure of the organization, right? From that. So enlightened is a good word. Like, we learned something. My vibe check on this Kevin Warren, Ryan Poles duo is sus. I am a little suspicious about what's going on here. I understand that Kevin Warren is a very powerful, connected, smart businessman. But how much does he know about football? I don't know. And so that's, I think, where there's some concern in terms of who's leading the search. I was put off by the press conference, as I think a lot of people were. I felt like it was very scripted. It was very political. It was very, there was no authenticity to me in that opening statement and the way that he answered questions, which I think it was an interesting contrast between the Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren press conference followed by Thomas Brown, who just talks to you and makes you feel like you're part of the conversation. Whereas Kevin Warren talks at you and it's very one directional. And I just don't know what this is going to look like. Kevin Warren, very connected. He's a networking man. He knows very powerful people, but what does that mean for how we can hire the best football coach for the Chicago Bears? I just don't know. I think also there's been some, obviously, because things haven't worked out for Ryan Poles, who also, by the way, had a lot of input on the Shane Waldron hire. There's some of the power has been stripped from him. And I think that, when you don't do your job well, right? Like, there are repercussions for that. So I just don't know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. I don't know what's happening. What's the process? Why is it going to be any different or better? That is why I am suspicious of this duo.
Fair, Ruthie. Very fair.
Okay, next topic on our vibe check. 2 more. Vibe check is, what's your vibe check on DeAndre Swift?
Extremely concerned. I'm concerned about DeAndre Swift. The injury adds another level of concern. I wrote concern down before I saw he was a DNP today, because this is a guy who, when the offensive line was creating some nice holes, the Bears were getting DeAndre Swift the ball in space, he was making big plays. I mean, like home run hitting plays. Give him a little bit of space, he can hit a home run. When there has not been room for him, though, he has struggled to create space for himself, to create plays for himself. And as the offensive line continues to get banged up, and as the Bears continue to play against good defenses, it's going to remain hard. It's going to remain hard for that space to get created. So the Bears are going to need to be creative. Thomas Brown is going to need to be creative. And with him being banged up now, potentially on the shelf, he's struggled. I don't think he's topped 50 yards the past couple of games. I don't think he's topped 40 yards the past couple of games. And again, as I said earlier, I think he's really the heartbeat of that offense. I think he really is the heartbeat of that offense. So I am concerned about DeAndre Swift.
My vibe check on DeAndre Swift is puzzled. I think there's an element of the lack of commitment to running the football. And I know when you get behind, it's harder to run the ball. And like, you need, and perhaps this has to do with the offensive line as well, and the protection and the holes that they're creating or not creating. But it just feels like there's never been a rhythm or consistency with the run game and DeAndre Swift. And now that he's out, it felt like they were getting closer. There was sort of more of a balance between him and Roshan and sort of trying to figure out, who works well in what situations. And it felt like they were getting there. And then it just kind of like went away. And Caleb Williams has really dominated the run game. Like that's kind of been your leading rusher in a lot of ways. So in a lot of these games. So I am puzzled by just sort of this like offense. I think in general, it's less about DeAndre Swift than it is about just sort of the run game and the offense and what the run game means to this offense. And moving forward, obviously, when all your running backs are hurt, not great. Not great, Bob. Not great. Not great. Okay, what's your vibe check on? Let's go quickly here because I want to get to our. Oh, you revealed the. Anyways.
Oh, no!
You revealed it. It's okay. We'll get
Spoiler alert. It's Spencer.
Last vibe check real quick. Bears' chances to win another football game. What's your vibe?
Not great, Ruthie. Really not great. You went over the schedule. I don't need to rehash it. It's the 3 divisional opponents again. It's the 49ers and Seahawks, who are both very good football teams. The Seahawks are going to be fighting for a playoff position, I believe. Because that NFC West is tough too. So not great. Turmoil, bad opponents, or bad schedule, tough opponents. It does not add up to success. It's going to be very difficult for the Bears to win a football game coming up here.
It's going to be really interesting to see how these games play out because the Bears have really been in all these games. I mean, 4 of the 6 that they've lost, they've been in them, right? And so it's going to be really interesting to see how Thomas Brown adjusts to being now the play caller and the game manager and the head coach and making sure it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'm just curious to see how it all shakes out for him because the offense was certainly turning around, but now there's just a lot more on his plate and he's moving from the booth to the field and there's just going to be an adjustment period. So I know everyone's like, they can rally around, this win and get a win in San Fran. There's sort of always this boost, when there's a coaching change or a coordinator change, like you see that happen. If you don't get San Francisco, it's going to be hard to kind of get some momentum. If the Bears lose their 7th straight game this Sunday, how do you rally the troops for Monday Night Football against the Vikings? I mean, in Minnesota. It's just, right? That's the next one. It goes San Fran, then Vikings. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, should have done that.
It is Vikings Monday Night Football, December 16th.
Yeah, do you think that gets flexed? Can that get flexed out? I wonder.
I don't know. Honestly,
I feel like we would know by now.
The Bears are fortunate that they're hosting the Seahawks. If they were on the road at the Seahawks, I would almost say it's a wrap. So that's a fortunate moment that they're hosting the Seahawks the day after Christmas. But again, the Seahawks are going to be playing for playoff positioning, right? They're first in the division. They're going to be trying to get a home game in the playoffs, which is so huge. Yeah, and then as you said, so they're on the road at San Francisco, on the road Monday Night Football, the Vikings. They host the Lions, but the Lions are gearing up for a Super Bowl run. At home, Seahawks leading the division. On the road at Lambeau Field. And I mean, come on. Yeah. On the road at Lambeau Field. Get real.
Yeah. Did I give a description of my vibe? My vibe check for this schedule is, and the Bears winning another game is, this sounds mean. Who cares? It's like, if they win one game, if they win 2 games, like, what does that mean? What you care about right now is Caleb Williams' development. That's what you care about. Do you care about wins? I think Thomas Brown cares about wins and the coaching staff cares about wins because their futures are on the line, but like the players are going to be here. I think there are obviously some players that are playing for stuff, but like the coaching staff wants to win these games because it's an audition for them. I think the players, like, there's not much to play, put your body on the line and play for. When you're Caleb Williams, I know you're a competitor. These guys are competitors and they want to play hard and they want to win games and they're embarrassed and they don't like losing. I get that. But it's just, if they can't pull out a win in San Francisco this weekend, it's going to be really hard to rally the troops for the rest of the year. Like I can just see it spiraling. And I really hope that doesn't happen. I already said that I'm cautiously hopeful for Thomas Brown, and I believe in him. I think he's a great coach, but I just don't really know if it matters if they win 1-2 more games. If they win 4 more games, if they win 5 games, like, then we care. Right? Like, then we're like, oh, Thomas Brown maybe should be the head coach. But if they win 1 or 2 of these games, what does it mean?
I think it does matter. And this is going to be kind of like a case against tanking, because I think a lot of Bears fans are going to want the Bears to lose out to improve that draft pick. And I think improving the draft pick, I mean, it's already going to be improved. Right? They're going to get a top 15 pick probably. I think winning is a learned thing. And this is something that Clay Harbor on this show has revealed. The first thing Bill Belichick said at OTAs was, first thing we have to do as a football team is learn how to not lose.
Yeah.
Losing breeds losing. Winning breeds winning. And for Caleb Williams, for this young core, they need to win some games so that they believe they can win football games, right? We saw it a little bit, and it fell flat in a huge way. It fell flat in a huge way, but we saw it a little bit at the end of last season coming into this season. I remember at the end of last season, guys in the locker room were actually pretty upbeat. They were like, obviously the season did not go as a whole the way we wanted it to, but the way things are trending, this offseason feels like a break. Like we're putting a pause on the situation, and we are going to pick up right where we left off in week 1 next year. And this year they did. They started out great, 4-2. And then things obviously fell apart in spectacular fashion for a wide variety of reasons. And the Bears, like that led to the firing of Matt Eberflus, right? But I do feel like some of that was felt, right? The defense that was winning games for the Bears at the end of last season was winning games for the Bears at the beginning of the season. I felt some of that carryover. And I think you can feel some of that carryover again if Caleb Williams is able to manufacture a win, if they're finally able to break through for that victory. I think that's important. I think he needs to feel that. I think the offense needs to feel that.
Yeah.
That finish. So that's why I think it would be important for them to get a win or 2 so that they believe they can do it.
I hear you on that. I hear you. And I think you've changed my perspective on that. But I
You're right, though. For 2024,
I'm a little negative.
Who cares is the right answer. For 2020, it's a wrap.
Yeah, it's a little uncharacteristic for me. I think also something getting very much lost in this is that Eric Washington is now the play caller. Like, you're not only losing your head coach and changing your offensive coordinator, and you have a new defensive coordinator who has not called plays for this defense. Did he call plays in the preseason at all? I don't recall.
He did. I believe he did call plays in the preseason, but I'm not sure that he called plays in Buffalo because Sean McDermott's over there.
But so just to that point, it's like this defense is not perfect right now. Like, there are major issues on this defense. And so is that going to get fixed? I mean, I'm just curious to see. It is about Caleb Williams and his success, but Caleb Williams has been doing his part for the most part late in games. A lot of times the defense has made Caleb Williams be in those positions to have to try and go win the game because the defense is giving up points late. So I'm just very curious to see what it all looks like on Sunday in the Bay Area. Okay, we are at 38 minutes and we are cooking here. So I want to have your scouting report, which we're going to do. Are we going to do this on every Wednesday, Alex?
Every Wednesday. It's going to be vibe check and now coaching candidate Wednesday.
We are going to highlight a coaching candidate on Wednesdays. And today he's the name you probably are already sick of hearing about. And it's Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who was a major candidate last year in the coaching carousel, decided to stay in Detroit, and will be the name seemingly this offseason. Let's get your thoughts, Alex Shapiro.
So let's start with the numbers because that's what matters, right? Scoring points. And that's something he says. The goal of his offense is to score more points than the other guy, because if you score more points than the other guy, you're going to win your football game. And that's something that the Detroit Lions have done a lot of. And their defense has also been very good this year. But really, when you think Detroit Lions and their resurgence, you are thinking that offense. Obviously, he has helped with the renaissance of Jared Goff. Jared Goff has played at an extremely high level under Ben Johnson's tutelage, and they have scored points. And it has not been a fluke. This is not a one-year flash in the pan thing. Here are some numbers for you. In 2020, this is before Ben Johnson, the Lions were 20th in points scored. In 2021, again, before Ben Johnson, they were 25th in points scored. In 2022, he takes over as the offensive coordinator for Dan Campbell. They immediately jump to 5th in points scored. In 2023, they follow that up again with 5th place in points scored. This year, they are number 1 in points scored. So that is 3 years in a row in the top 5, and this year they are leading the pack. They are also an extremely balanced attack, which I think is important. It's not just Jared Goff and Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown. It is also Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, who have been tearing it up. They come at you both ways. They come at you truly both ways. In 2022, they are 8th in the NFL in passing yards and 11th in rushing yards. In 2023, 2nd in passing yards, 5th in rushing yards. This season, they are 5th in passing yards and 4th in rushing yards. That is a balanced attack. So that's the Bear brass. The big question in Chicago is he a leader of men?
Hold on.
To be honest,
Look at my paper. Look at my paper. I wrote leader of men ? What's his personality?
I don't know how he is in the room, but I can tell you how he is at the podium. He is not quite that same domineering, commanding personality that you get out of Thomas Brown or a Brian Flores or a Mike Tomlin. That's not his style. He's more happy-go-lucky and comfortable, but he is happy-go-lucky and comfortable. Now, it is easy to be happy-go-lucky and comfortable when your offense kicks ass. And honestly, like, you're doing a great job, right? It's easy to be comfortable when you're doing a good job. Yes, Ruthie, your hand is raised.
It's also easy to be comfortable when you have the best offensive line and the best quarterback playing at his position right now, and incredible talent at wide receiver and really good running backs. Like, he is set up to succeed because of the personnel. And to me, Alex, I don't know where one starts and where one stops.
Fair. Totally fair. Like that's
going to be the big
come
question
up
for any of these coordinators, right?
Joe Brady. Where does Joe Brady begin and Josh Allen end? That's going to be a common question. Super fair. But he is. I mean, Jared Goff, that's a big piece here as well. Jared Goff also wasn't a flash in the pan. That first year we were like, Jared Goff looks pretty good. Let's see if they can do it again. They have done it again. Jared Goff, I mean, is a new QB thanks to Ben Johnson. He's also very confident. There was something that came up after the Packers game, I believe, where they were talking about a check that happened and tendencies, and basically there was a check at the line and the Packers caught them in a run. And they were doing he said, Kenny Clark is doing this, which means he's pumping his fists up and down, which means like they know we're in a run, and we were in a run and we ran the ball, right? It was a 3rd and 5. We stuck with it. They knew what we were doing. We still got 9 yards because guess what? Even when teams know what's coming, they cannot stop it. So there's that confidence. Collaboration point. This is from another press conference he mentioned. Every week he gives the offensive line his run play sheet, and then he asks them to star their 5 favorites. And when he looks at all the favorites from all the offensive linemen, then he's able to suss out and say, okay, these are the ones I have to call this week. So he is definitely going to his players and saying, what do you love? And this is something, it's not extremely uncommon, right? Offensive coordinators talk with their players and say, hey, what do you love? What do you not love? What do we need to call? But that's an interesting way of doing it. Going to all of your offensive linemen saying, pick your favorite run plays. And then from there, he's like, okay, I gotta call these this week. So that's pretty cool. And then one last one that just really stuck out to me when I was going through his Wikipedia, he sticks places. He sticks through coaching changes. And that to me is very interesting that he's identified as a guy that needs to stick around. So he started with the Dolphins in 2012, and stayed with the Dolphins through 2018. He started as an offensive assistant. His last job was a wide receivers coach. That's the Joe Philbin era, the Dan Campbell era, which is important, and the Adam Gase era. When Brian Flores took over in 2019, he brought over his dude, Chad O'Shea. They were guys from the Patriots. Like, that's his guy. They went way back. So he makes a change. He goes to the Lions in 2019. He's obviously still with the Lions. He started as an offensive quality coach, and now he's the offensive coordinator. So again, he started at the bottom, rose pretty much to the top, and that was Matt Patricia and Dan Campbell. So he stuck with Dan Campbell. Obviously, Dan Campbell knew him from Miami and liked him enough from Miami to say, yes, I'm going to retain you. So it's a guy who has been retained several times through coaching upheavals. And to me, that's noteworthy. If you're a guy who sticks through regime changes, sticks at places for a long time, isn't bouncing around a lot, you're obviously doing something right, in my opinion. So those are some, I didn't go over the negatives. I'm typically a good vibes guy. So those are some intriguing reasons why Ben Johnson could be a very good hire for head coach for the Chicago Bears.
Very interesting. I feel like you hit on it all. I mean, the leader of men I had written down because that's kind of the buzz phrase that someone from the Bears has leaked to every insider on the planet about this is what the Bears are looking for, quote, leader of men. There are also women in the organization, by the way. I would just like to point that out. But it's just, you wonder what that means. What does that mean? I don't know. If someone's going to be a good coach, like they're a good coach, what does leader of men mean? I was really hoping someone was going to ask that in the press conference that was cut off after 18 minutes or whatever it was.
It's only 10 minutes of questions because it was 10 minutes of opening statements.
Right. 10 minutes of opening statements. Right. Great stuff, Alex Shapiro. I think that's going to be the name, right? Like, people are going to have to try and swoon Ben Johnson. And what does he think of Caleb Williams? What does he think of the McCaskey family? What does he think of Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles in the way that they've built this team? Because the Lions built their team through the trenches, and that's clearly worked out really well for them. The Bears have gone kind of outside in, and it's not going so well. And there are a lot of things at play there, but I'm curious to see what Ben Johnson thinks of the Bears too. This is not necessarily going to be a one-sided search. And I think that's something that we'll have to be keeping our eye on as well.
Absolutely. It's true. Like, it's got to be chosen on both sides because Ben Johnson is going to be in high demand, as you mentioned.
Yeah. All right. Great stuff, Alex Shapiro. I'm Ruthie Polinsky. That's the Charter Podcast on a busy Wednesday, brought to you by St. Xavier University. We'll see you on Friday.